So here's the bad news. Dating is dead. In fact, many of the practices that we've grown accustomed to, the ones that we've read about and watched on TV, often fantasized about, they don't exist anymore. So what does that mean for what is now America's largest generation, millennials? What does that mean for love? What are my chances of finding love? What does that mean for sex? I mean, listen, dating is one thing. Sex is still alive, right? And if dating is dead, then who's to blame? Apparently, me. And not to point the finger, many of you in the audience, the millennials. They call us the hookup generation. If you Google the words millennials and dating together, you'll come up with all type of headlines. The end of courtship, the millennials and their dating woes, Tinder and the dawn of the dating apocalypse. They really thought about that one. Now, content like this isn't without merit, but it also isn't an accurate reflection of the whole picture. It's more like alternative facts. Now, unless you've been living off of the grid for, say, the past decade or so, you do understand that, yes, sex is more accessible than it's ever been. And even with that being the case, according to Pew Research, we're actually having less sex than any generation since our grandparents. So, Grandma, I wasn't that fast after all. They say that relationships have lost value amongst our generation and that we no longer want commitment, but 8 out of 10 millennials still say true romance is important. So now that we've balanced the conversation a little bit, what does the dating process look like for you and I today and going forward? All of us here, we're in a unique position in that we've been able to live through transitions and evolutions as they've happened real time. We've gone from cassette tapes to CDs, from CDs to streaming, not only music, but television. My phone is essentially a computer that fits in my pocket and affords me access to what seems like infinite information. And if I'm being honest, it's that dynamic that's spoiled me. The need for instant results. If my Uber takes longer than 5 minutes, I'm upset. And I've seen that influence other areas of my life, including the way I date, even down to the small things. I can't tell you how annoying it is to hear this thing actually ring. Every time somebody calls me, it's like, hello? Are you dying? Hang up and text me. And I know I'm not the only one. And so that gives us another dynamic to deal with. So how do we build relationships? Collectively, we're at an interesting place. We're basically in the twilight zone of romance. It's called the gray area. We meet people, whether it's at a lounge or through sending a DM or on a website. We hang out, whatever that means. Sometimes sex is involved. And now we begin these relationships that we don't call relationships because we don't want to be in relationships, but they feel like relationships because we do relationship things, and now we are attached, but at the same time fighting to stay unattached. It's confusing. And now we're engulfed in these situations, or what are now called situationships. None of that is dating. In fact, nobody really knows what dating looks like at this point. So I decided I'm going to do a little research to find out what exactly people consider to be a formal date these days. Found a few definitions. The first I found in the answers section of Yahoo, so it has to be true. A casual date is when you wear regular clothes, and a formal date, well, that's when you dress nicely. Makes sense. Then there was the answer I found on Yelp. Who knew Yelp gave dating advice? A user posted, a real date begins by going over to a young lady's house and talking to her parents about your intentions, then getting a DNA swab. So no one knows what a formal date is. And you know, that's funny, but it's also proof that our dating habits have to evolve because life has evolved. In generations past, potential couples would meet at the skating rink or at the school dance. Not too long ago, when going on a date, it was expected of me to drive to a young lady's house and meet her at her front door. Today, a date could be a 30-minute conversation at Starbucks, or it could take place via Skype. The internet age has redefined the way we meet and the way we communicate with people. That does present us with a new set of challenges, but it's not the internet's fault. It's not Tinder's fault. Poor Tinder. Takes the blame for everything. The fact is, the social rules for dating have always changed from one generation to the next. Today, we have countless tools at our disposal that make many different aspects of life more efficient. Why should dating be exempt from that? Are more Americans single and waiting longer for commitment? Yes, my generation included. Only 26% of adult millennials are married. But it is also true that technology has made the world smaller, which makes our chances of meeting like-minded people greater than they've been in the past. The key for us as we move forward is to remember that the tools that are at our disposal, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Tinder, Bumble, Match, just to name a few, they're just tools. They do help us to reach and connect to people. But the job of creating meaningful and clearly defined relationships, that job is still ours. Unfortunately, there isn't a standardized roadmap on how to find love. As much as I wish it was, there isn't an app for it. Dating is no longer just an event or series of events. Dating in today's world is a dual process. The first part involves us finding someone that deserves our exclusive attention, which requires that we be intentional and almost tedious in our attachments. That we grow to be self-aware enough that we know who we are at our core, which will help us to identify the best potential partner. That we stay active and engaged and don't lose the art of being social, which means we have to multitask and remember life should also be lived offline. The latter part of the dating process involves building a life with one person, which means we have to make a choice, even when it seems like we can swipe left or right for as long as we want, because there's unlimited options at our fingertips. Last year, the number of social media users worldwide reached almost 2 billion people. Talk about options, 2 billion people. Each of us right now could pull up our respective social media feeds and we'd see many people project an almost disdain for commitment. We could just scroll our timeline and we'd see all type of posts. Chase money, not love. No new friends. I'm a savage. People are really excited about being alone. We could just observe current pop culture trends or listen to the most popular songs right now, and yes, entertaining, and we might even dance, but we see much of the same attitude being reflected. And even in the midst of all the noise, we still can't escape how we're wired as humans, which is for companionship. I'll tell you a secret. We can't run from it. I don't know why I just whispered that, but it is true. Harvard University did a study that fits this conversation perfectly. It took them over 75 years to complete, but they discovered the #1 correlation to long life: meaningful connections. You know, this hit home for me about 2 years ago. I was sitting in a University of Pennsylvania hospital room, and I watched a doctor tell my dad that his fight with cancer was ending, basically giving him a week to live. You know, he had this look on his face that even today I can't quite articulate it. But it was such an anxiousness in the air. It wasn't until maybe a day or so later during one of my last conversations with him that I realized, or at least got a sense of some of what he was experiencing. You know, in those moments, he wasn't worried about all of the things that I thought made life important. He wasn't even worried about life itself. You know, all he cared about were two things: the people he loved and the people who loved him. So let me leave you with this. As a term, dating is more fluid than it's been in the past. Looks different, feels different. But as a process, it's stable. And though we might experience some hiccups along the way, we may go about it in some ways that seem unconventional at first. If we would employ it and engage in it, we could put ourselves in position to create relationships that have the capacity to increase our quality of life. And that's what dating is supposed to be about, because that's what life is about. And so to answer the question, is dating dead? Only if we allow it to die. Thank you.